We're going to talk about some new proposed voting laws. I believe that to vote in America, you should be an American citizen. You ought to have an ID proving that. Everything ought to be done to keep voter fraud. We've had fraudulent elections, absolutely, in the history of our country. And we have had one recently. Romans the 13th chapter tells us to take heed to governing civil authorities. They're ordained of God. It tells us that if you're a wrongdoer, be afraid. If you are doing well, you don't have anything to be afraid of. And only for bad behavior should you be censored and prosecuted. But in America today, right is wrong and wrong is right. We have a great problem with it. I have a little synopsis here of the H.R. 1. Would be voters' rights, or whatever you might call it. Absolutely, the door is wide open. The windows are wide open for fraud. What it actually is your owner's manual. Their owner's manual of you. And this situation that we're in today, I am thankful that we have some freedom of speech. It's being censored more every day. We're becoming more like a communist regime all the time. The people are beginning to wake up. Some are beginning to wake up. I think the majority of the country are beginning to wake up from the slumber. What's going to happen here in this H.R. 1 bill is that elections will be administered from the federal government and not from states. We had a civil war in America. The conservatives against the liberals, and the liberals won. The liberals won. The Republican Party at that time was the liberal establishment. It has changed sides now. The Republicans are the conservative and the Democrats are the liberal. In the Civil War, the North were the liberals and the South were the conservatives. Now, the North is the liberals and the South is the conservatives. The North is the Democratic Party and the South are the conservative states, the Republican Party. It's opposite of what happened. In Abraham Lincoln's time, the Republican Party stood for big government. Hamiltonian, Henry Clay type, Clayism and Hamiltonian type government. Large government, national bank, money printed by one source, etc., etc., etc. So have complete control of the people and take away states' rights. This is a regurgitation of that same thing. You that have listened to my messages on the President of the United States, and especially on Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson, knows that you get your magnifying glass out, and look at things carefully. They aren't as they are to be. They are not as they seem to be. We need to be a Sherlock Holmes and look at all the evidence, not part of it, not what the mass media wants you to believe and propagates. There's about 30 different principles in this. This is not all of it. The thing is 791 pages long. But this is a Reader's Digest synopsis of it. The bill gives the federal government authority to administer elections, although the U.S. Constitution gives states the authority to run their elections as they see fit. What happened in Lincoln's time, Lincoln interpreted the Constitution for us. It's not what the Constitution said, it's what he said it said. And there we have now with the Supreme Court telling us what the Constitution, they're interpreting it to us what the Constitution says, not what the Constitution says. That's different. They use the Constitution, but they don't believe in the Constitution. Democrats especially, and even Republicans at times, they use it, but they abuse it. Congress finds that it has a broad authority to regulate the time, place, and manner of congressional elections under the Elections Clause of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, as their interpretation is. As their interpretation is. Number 2, it limits plaintiffs' access to federal courts when challenging H.R. 1. The bill mandates that any lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of H.R. 1 could only be filed in the District Court of the District of Columbia. And all plaintiffs would be required to file joint papers in order to be represented by a single attorney at oral agreement. Number 3, H.R. 1 mandates automatic voter registrations in all 50 states. 19 states currently have automatic voter registration in what proponents call modernization of elections. Any person who gives their information to a designated government agency, such as the Department of Motor Vehicles, a public university, a Social Security agency, would be registered to vote. The bill mandates same-day and online registration. That is vote manufacturing. And Mr. George Bush started it with the illegal aliens with their driver's license. He's in the same league with Obama and Biden. Kamala Harris. No different. Open your eyes. Please. All the guys wearing white hats aren't wearing white hats. Simple as that. All the guys wearing black hats aren't wearing black hats. Number H.R. 1 mandates no-fault absentee ballots. This provision does away with witness signature notarization requirements for absentee ballots. Additionally, it would force states to accept absentee ballots received up to 10 days after the election. This is not an election. This is their owner's manual of your life. And your state rights are gone. Your citizenship rights are gone. And they pad the ballot box. Number 5, H.R. 1 prevents election officials from removing eligible voters from registries and confirming eligibility and qualifications of voters. Voter fraud, 100%. The bill would make it illegal to verify the address of registered voters, cross-checking voter registration lists to find individuals registered in multiple states, or ever removing registrants no matter how much time has elapsed, whether they're dead or alive, etc. Number 6, H.R. 1 restores the Voting Rights Act. This provision requires states to obtain approval from the federal government before implementing any charges or changes to voting rules. There is also a provision that criminalizes the hindering, interfering, or preventing anyone from registering to vote illegal aliens or illegal outlaw aliens. Criminals are criminals. Those that have been dishonorably discharged out of the services are not eligible to vote. Number 7, H.R. 1 bans state voter ID laws. States would no longer be allowed to require ID for voting and would be forced to accept signed statements from individuals claiming and to verify who they are and who they say they are. Number 8. H.R. 1 ensures illegal immigrants can vote, thanks to George Bush also, allowing the illegal aliens to get driver's license. That is a automatic voter registration, remember. The bill shields non-citizens from prosecution if they are registered to vote. Automatically, agencies wouldn't be required to give records of those who decline to affirm their citizenship. Number 9, H.R. 1 allows same-day voter registration. States would be required to permit same-day registration, including for early voting at polling stations. The section includes a clause that requires same-day voter registration to be implemented in the time for the upcoming elections up to 2022. H.R. 1 allows 16-year-olds to vote. You know that a lot of the illegal aliens are 16 years old, and according to Bush, now they can apply for driver's license and ID and automatic voter registration. Open your eyes. From January 1st, 2022, states wouldn't be allowed to refuse a voting application from anyone aged 16 or older. Additionally, states would be required to carry out a plan to increase the involvement of individuals under 18 years of age in public election activities. It always was 18 years old or 21 years old. Always. But now 16-year-olds. 16-year-olds are, the illegal aliens, the girls are encouraged to get pregnant as fast as they can and have anchor babies. This is encouraging that. It's encouraging voter fraud. It's encouraging illegal citizens, illegal aliens, and treating them as if they're citizens, and also paying their maternity bills and everything else. Medi-Cal, Medicare, so to speak, and food stamps. And aging citizens that have worked all their life in America are struggling to pay their bills, especially that Mr. George Bush saddled us with the prescription. The first man, the first president to institute what we call mandated insurance is Mr. George Bush. It has broke me ever since he did it. And now the pharmaceutical industry thinks they know more than your doctors of what you need. If the doctor gives you a prescription and they don't like it, they won't pay for it. And you're already paying for your prescription and insurance mandated by Mr. George Bush Jr. Number 11, H.R. 1 prohibits the publication of misleading information about elections. The bill makes it a federal crime to communicate or cause to be communicated information that is knowledgeably false and designed to discourage voting, carrying a sentence up to 5 years. And illegal aliens can vote. And a citizen, if he complains, can be given 5-year sentence in prison. Opponents say the provision raises the First Amendment concerns, freedom of speech. We already know that Twitter took the President of the United States and banned him off of Twitter. That's First Amendment rights, people. And this is massive motor misinformation by doing that. The President of the United States. Ooh. Talk about boundaries, there are none. H.R. 1 allows felons to vote. Under the Democratic Restoration Act, federal dollars for prisoners would be restricted in states that don't allow ex-convicts to vote. The bill says that all felons can vote unless they are serving a felony sentence in a correctional institution or facility at the time of the election. And they'll get around that too. H.R. 1 mandates early voting. States would be required to allow anyone to cast a ballot during an early voting period prior to the date of the election. Voter harvesting, ballot harvesting. Number 14, H.R. 1 legalizes nationwide mail-in voting without photo ID. Absentee voting by mail would be allowed in all federal elections and may not require an individual to provide any form of identification as a condition of obtaining an absentee ballot. A witness signature wouldn't be required. As a mass number of illegal alien felons were turned back loose on the United States people to harvest these votes. Number 15, H.R. 1 promotes ballot harvesting. Any designated person would be allowed to return absentee ballots to any ballot drop-off location or election office so long as the person doesn't receive compensation based on the number of ballots he or she collected. Additionally, there would be no limit on the number of absentee ballots any designated person could return to the ballot boxes. Number 16, requires states to accept ballots 10 days after the election day. States would be required to accept any mailed-in ballots postmarked before or on election day that arrive within 10 days of the election. The bill allows states to expand that deadline. Number 17, H.R. 1 prohibits state election officials from campaigning in federal elections. State election officials would be from participating in political management or campaigns for any election in which the officials have supervisory authority. This would most affect states like Georgia, whose secretaries of state have been notably involved in the elections. By the way, not all the things in H.R. 1 are negative. Number 18 requires colleges and universities to hire campaign campus coordinators, vote coordinators. We know that if you got a bachelor's degree or associate degree or a master's degree in any American university today, you're probably a certified liberal because you've been taught that from day one. The bill requires institutions of higher learning to employ an official who would be responsible for informing students about elections and encourage them to register to vote. It would be incentivized voter registration by giving grants to institutions that have high registration rates. Number 19, H.R. 1 mandates that states make absentee voter boxes available for 45 days within an election. Drop boxes would be made available for individuals to draw fall absentee ballots for federal elections at any time, 24 hours a day during the voting period. Number 20, H.R. 1 requires states to allow curbside voting. States may not prohibit any jurisdiction administering an election for the federal office in the state from utilizing curbside voting as a method by which individuals may cast ballots in the election. We have a countermeasure to this today, election integrity, that is being wrestled over. Number 21, urges statehood for the District of Columbia and representatives for territories. The bill points to the fact that District of Columbia is not yet a state. Adding to the United States is the only democratic country that denies both voting registration in the national legislature and local self-government to the residents of the nation's capital. It appoints a commission that would advocate for congressional representation and presidential goals. Voter harvesting. Number 22 requires the states to withdraw congressional districts through independent commissions, taking power away from the state and legislation, and the bill would require redistricting to occur through commissions that also require to show racial, ethnical, economic, and gender diversity. Number 23, H.R. 1 creates a national commission to protect the United States democratic institutions. A national commission would study elections and produce a report after 18 months with recommendations for improving elections. It would comprise 10 members, only 4 of whom would be selected by the minority party, giving control to the majority party. Of course, at this time, that is the Democratic Party. Fixing elections. Fixing elections. We know that John Kennedy's election was fixed. We know that George Bush's election was fixed. We know that Biden's election was fixed. And these bills would fix every election from now on. The American citizen would be completely deprived of his rights. He would be owned by the state. Not by the state, but by the federal government. H.R. 1 mandates new disclosure for corporations. Bill codifies the Democrats' Disclosure Act to restrict corporate participation in elections. They already did that, didn't they? Facebook, Twitter, the Big Five. Ooh, hypocrisy, huh? Democrats say this provision will shed light on the dark money, while Republicans counter that the legislature's transparency requirements would violate free speech rights, and it has. Number 25, oversight of online political advertising. A provision called for the stand by every ad act would be stop campaign dollars from covering any form of advertising over the internet. Opponents say this would increase the cost of campaigning. Number 26, it weakens the Supreme Court's 2010 decision in the case of Citizens United versus federal elections. The bill states that the Supreme Court's misinterpretation of the Constitution to empower moneyed interests at the expense of the American people in elections has seriously eroded over 100 years of congressional action to promote fairness and protect elections from toxic influence of money. Boy, it happened this last time, didn't it? It also suggests that the Constitution could be amended so that the Congress of the United States may regulate and set limits on raising and spending money. Number 27, H.R. 1 allows for politicians to use campaign funds for personal use under provision called the Help American Run Act. The bill legalizes the use of campaign donations for personal expenses such as child care, etc. Number 28, H.R. 1 challenges a composition of the FEC. The bill decreases the number of members on the FCC from 6 to 5. 4 members can be associated with a particular political party, making the 5th member independent, but nominated by a president associated with a party. Former FCC members have written to Congress warning about this change and other related provisions. Number 29, H.R. 1 changes rules around conflicts of interest for the President and Vice President. It would require the President and Vice President to divest all financial interests that could pose a conflict of interest for them, their families, or anyone with whom they are negotiating or who is seeking employment in the administration. Ooh, red flags all over for this administration, isn't it? Red flags all over. This could be treason. H.R. 1 changed the FEC rules to require presidential candidates to provide their tax returns within 15 days of becoming a covered candidate. The individual would be required to submit copies of his or her tax returns going back 10 years to the FEC. This is their owner's manual. There you have it. We need to pray for our country. We need to pray that it will be America still. Because if this takes place, it may have the name United States of America, but it's not united. It is not united today. It's more disunited than it has been since the Civil War. Digest this well. They're fighting over this right now. You need to encourage your people, your representatives, senators, to speak your voice, not theirs.